Welcome to the Connecting with Coincidence radio show with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, bringing together the world's synchronicity experts to help you use meaningful coincidences to develop spiritually, psychologically, and practically. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence into your web browser to find the book, website, Psychology Today blog, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. And now, here is the host of the Connecting with Coincidence radio show, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD.
Yes. This is Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and that is me. Look up in the sky. There is a mystery of a coincidence up there. The sun and the moon are 93 million miles apart, yet appear to us on Earth to be the same size. Remember the solar eclipse. The moon passes in front of the sun, blocking the light, making the daytime into night. The moon is just the right size at just the right distance to act as if it's the same size as the sun. What a coincidence! What a coincidence! The moon and the sun have been major symbols for generations of human beings, yin and yang, male and female. The coincidence of their same size could be a message to us, like balance our opposites. Pay attention to coincidences. We here are coinciders. We experience meaningful coincidences. We come insiders together, finding the symbols popping up around us. We look through the lenses of synchronicity and find guidance and connections that expand the filters of conventional reality. Sharpen your sensitivity to coincidences. Examine their potential uses and explanations. Read my book, Connecting with Coincidence, and learn how, along with me, coincidences work. Synchronicity spoken here. Our guest today is Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, who is chair of the Winton Centre for Risk Evidence Communication at the University of Cambridge, which aims to improve the way that statistical evidence is used by health professionals, patients, lawyers, and judges, the media, and policymakers. He advises organizations and government agencies on risk communication and is a regular media commentator on issues statistical with a particular focus on communicating uncertainty. He is the author of Sex by Numbers and The Art of Statistics. He works extensively with the media and presented on BBC4 documentaries called Tales You Win, The Science of Chance, and the award-winning Climate Change by the Numbers. He was elected Fellow of the Royal Society in 2005, knighted in 2014 for services to medical statistics, and was President of the Royal Statistical Society 2017-2018. Welcome to the show, David.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to be on it.
It's really good to have you. I want to start with why you study coincidences.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I have been involved in risk and risk communication and public understanding of risk. And and the problem with risk is it's all to do with the downside of events. It's always about the bad things that happen. And I see coincidences as being the upside of chance and uncertainty. When good things happen, really surprising good things happen instead of surprising bad things happening to people. And that's why I feel that coincidences are enormously important in their lives. I love them. I am fascinated by them. But I wonder, given your intro, whether in fact you're going to be pleased to have me on your show, because as the conversation will develop, you'll see that I'm quite a skeptic about what meaning one should draw from coincidences.
Yes, I know. David Hand has been on the show, and Joe Mazer, and I've had great communications with them. I took probability theory in college and got a AA in it. It's very interesting to me. And part of what I think of coincidences being defined as is probability is part of the definition of a coincidence. I want to be able to see if I can get approximations of the probability of coincidences. And I don't know, the questions I sent you might be too complicated for our show, but the probability question is very important in my study of coincidences. So I'm delighted to have you on the show and listen to the skeptical side of things, or let me say the statistical side of things.
Yeah. I mean, I work in the maths department at Cambridge, which many would say is the best maths department in the world. And so might seem slightly anomalous, maybe to my colleagues, that I am so fascinated by coincidences. We've got a website, the Cambridge Coincidence Collection. We've got thousands of coincidences that people have sent in.
Yes.
And the basic idea there was to collect them. And where possible, I really love trying to work out what the probability of particular events was. Now that, as I'm sure we'll come to in our discussion, is often very difficult indeed. But I have a good go when you can think of a physical mechanism and so on. I really like trying to do that. I wouldn't say you could do that with everything at all. But, many people ask me, and some of them you can, like matching birthdays and maybe chances of people meeting in a particular place. You can have a good go at that. But some of them, as you know, are so bizarre that you kind of think, well, I'm not going to I just want to sit there in amazement and enjoy it.
Well, it's the bizarre ones, and let me try this one on you because it goes both ways. When a coincidence seems to have a low probability, that to me is a coincidence that should be looked for some anomalous explanation.
Yes. I mean, I guess, as the line will be that I am, quite a skeptic. I don't believe, I might as well come out and say it. I don't believe that. Yeah, okay. I don't believe there's anything going on there. I really just think that I just believe that there's massive amount of opportunities for bizarre things to happen in our lives. A huge, a coincidence I think of as a surprising concatenation of events into which we tend to ascribe meaning. In other words, the coincidence is not just an objective, things happening together. It requires a human input because it really depends on that it provokes a feeling in us that wow, of surprise and awe and wonder and possibly wow, there must be something going on to cause that. And I have the surprise and awe and wonder, but I don't get to the stage of thinking there must be something behind that.
Yes, and your and this general statistical way of thinking about it, in very large populations, weird stuff can happen.
Yeah, and I guess again something we might come back to in a moment. My feeling about coincidences is not when I hear one, I think, oh, that's amazing. But what I always think of is we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. There are vast numbers of extraordinary coincidences that are happening all the time that we just are not aware of.
Yes, and what is that? What are you saying when you say that?
Well, I suppose. I mean. Okay, I'll get straight to. We might want to come back to issues of what kind of people experience coincidences. And I have long communications. Also, please don't email me because I've got enough people I'm talking to. But so I make an appeal: don't email me. But people email me say, well, why do I experience all these coincidences? Why do these things keep happening to me? And I just come to the conclusion that they do happen to certain sorts of people. And actually, I like the sort of people they tend to happen to because they tend to happen to people who are sensitive and observant and mindful of their situations and aware of what's going on. And so they notice these concatenations of events. And if you're not like that, you don't notice them. I've had ones sent in where, I don't know, somebody says, oh, I was on a train to London and there was this woman wearing a red coat and I wandered around London during the day and I saw her twice more in London, the same person. And I think, well, that's amazing. But I wouldn't have noticed. I never noticed what anyone's wearing. There's no chance that would have happened to me. Now, the actual event could have happened to me and probably has happened to me endless times. that the person I've been sitting next to, as on the train to London, where I go down at least once a week, I've come close to again during the day. I mean, it's almost inevitable it will have happened, but I won't have noticed because I don't notice anything. That's why I always say coincidences never happen to me, because I'm not very mindful and I walk along staring at my shoes and I'm hopeless. I'm hopeless, really. That's why I'm so in awe of people noticing these things.
I'd like to send you a paper in which I've looked at the characteristics of people who see more coincidences. They're more psychological. Would you like to see that?
No, I wouldn't. But I suppose I've just, from my own experience, I've got some conclusion to that. And just the fact that people report coincidences that, as I said, could have happened to me in terms of the closeness of the events, but I just wouldn't have noticed.
Okay, so it's compared to the way you would do it. They notice them. I mean, it's simple ipso facto. They notice them, so they're sensitive to them. Is a way of saying it, and I think that's a nice, very simple way of describing it.
But what it means is that there's masses of coincidences that could have happened to me and that I just didn't notice. So in that sense, it's not a coincidence in the way we accept it, because it requires the human observer to make it into a coincidence.
If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it.
Yeah. And well, that's why I kind of sometimes refer to latent coincidences and manifest coincidences. The latent coincidence is the fact that, I was on a train and I sat next to my long lost twin brother or something like that and never spoke to them, so I never found out. And the manifest coincidence is if I'd spoken to them and actually found out.
Very good. Very good. We're coming to the end of this segment, and your thinking is very clear and coming across to our audience about how it goes. And I like the simplicity of the way you're able to describe what you're experiencing. In the next segment, I'm going to be asking you about TV, radio, and news coincidences.
Oh, that's fine.
You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Sir David Spiegelhalter. Welcome back to CC with BB. I'm Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. This is Connecting with Coincidence, and we are talking to Sir David Spiegelhalter, statistician, well-known all over the place, especially in England and Europe, and boy, is it fun. So, David, one of the things that quid analysis that was reported in the Atlantic showed was the coincidence involving TV, radio, and the news were fairly prominent. I can do probability on birthdays and vacation related, and meeting people in transit even, and with in-laws. But the TV radio one is an important one because that's a very common one in my research. And it's sometimes it's related to what a person is thinking. They're not just both observables like red coats. They're observables. I'm thinking something and I hear the song on the radio.
Yeah. Well, I won't accept those into our website, into our collection. No, the precognition ones, I was thinking this, and then the music, it's always the music came on or something like that. That's the usual one. I was thinking of this, or thinking this, and then I saw something. No, banned.
Or I have a question, and it's answered right now. It's not precognition. I have a question, and it's answered by the radio or TV.
Yeah, I don't accept those at all as coincidences.
Okay.
Partly because they're not falsifiable. There's no way I can prove whether they actually happen.
They're not observable.
They're not observable. They're not based on observable. And also, and the other reason I think is that the human mind, we know from the development of our understanding of neuroscience that we make decisions about things before we think about them. On the whole, yes. The consciousness of our actions and our thoughts comes after we've thought them. And after we've decided and everything like that. So that consciousness, as someone who says, "Oh, I was thinking that, and then I heard that," I just don't believe it necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying they're fraudulent or deluded or anything like that. It's just the way the human mind works. Yeah, I don't think we can put those sorts of things in order.
What do you do with the one that I did with someone a couple of weeks ago, where I emailed him just as he was about to email me?
No. If the emails had crossed, I'd have accepted it. Not when it was just an intention to do it.
Is it?
No, because that again. He might think he'll feel after the event, after your email came in, he might think, "Oh, I was just about to email you."
No, he did email me. He
Oh,
had he had the email prepared to send to me. So it
yeah.
was it was
Okay.
within a
He was
couple
about
of
to press the
minutes.
button. Yeah, I mean, I don't actually. Come on, that must have happened loads of times with you when you're having an email correspondence with you. Now, if it
This is
how
somebody who I haven't been in contact with for months.
for months, okay, now that is quite surprising. I mean, if it's years or months, now that is more surprising.
So
However,
what do you do with that one? You
well,
put it in
I don't
put it in the
know.
weird events category.
I'd say that's surprising. That's a bit of a surprise. Was there, and then I'd start asking, okay, was there some external event that provoked the interest in this? Is there something that you both had seen, or what provoked that correspondence? Because it's very similar to the meeting somebody when you're on holiday that from home, and you're both
That's different.
I meet them, and I regard this slightly similar, because you think, oh well, that's an amazing coincidence. You're both in the same time and place, and you didn't expect to see that person. However, very often in those circumstances, there's some other reasons. Probably this is it's holiday season. This is the kind of place.
Yeah, I got that. In this instance, I was emailing him about talking with him about coincidences, and he was about to email me to because his son, who works for NPR, wanted to talk with me about coincidences.
Okay, so there's nothing related, no common cause for your correspondences. That's quite good. Now, but how much correspondence do you have? How many emails do you have with people? How many people are you corresponding with about coincidences? So what I'm saying, I want to know the denominator. All the time when I ask this, some event has happened. All you're doing is telling me this one event has happened. I want to know the number of opportunities there have been for that event to happen. And if you think of all the people you send emails to and all the emails you receive, the chances that two of them essentially coming at the same time at some point in a year or something like that is high. I mean, it's still a surprising event, but actually, and at the time, it must have been deeply surprising for the two of you. However, if you stand back and think, what's the chance, and this is, I'm sure, other people that you've interviewed have said this, the boring old statistical approach. I don't want to know the chance of this particular event. I want to know the chance of an event like that happening within, say, in a year or 2 years or 10 years.
Yeah, you want to know the base rate.
The base rate. What is overall? What is the rate at which this type of event happen? An event of this class would happen.
And I email with people about coincidence quite often, as you might guess.
Exactly. So I think while the event itself is extraordinary, you need to think about the number of opportunities. And it's such a common thing that I always just use the example of winning the lottery, which is unbelievably, staggeringly unlikely for the individual that won. But when you hear about it on the news, it's not news, it's yawn. So someone won the lottery. Well, good on them. But, they sold a lot of tickets. So I think we always need to distinguish between the surprise to the individual to whom the event happened and the surprise to someone who hears about it.
Oh, yeah. My coincidence is more interesting to me than it is to you. We know that one.
Yeah.
And one of the questions we had is, do you put a number on surprise? Do you rate surprise?
Well, I on our website, I try to do it. Is this? I just ask people. Is this something that happens you regard as something that might, sort of thing that might happen to you once a year, or once every 10 years, once in a lifetime, or once in many lifetimes? In other words, and I do this in my head all the time when something happens and I think, wow, that's the sort of thing that I might only experience once a year. That's the sort of thing I might only expect to experience once every 10 years. And then a lot of the ones we get sent in are clearly once in a lifetime experiences that they happened 40 years ago and people remembered them. And some of them are things that happen to some people are so staggering that I think, well, that's the sort of thing you might expect to only happen to, in a group of 100 people, only one of them would experience like that something like that over their entire lifetime. So my rough measure of surprise is the rate at which they might occur in the population, to an individual or even to a group of people.
And does the intensity of the surprise figure into the probability of the event?
Oh, yes, I think that comes into surprise. Well, it wouldn't be the probability. This is the problem with the probability. Do you mean the objective probability of the event, or do you mean occurring, or do you mean essentially the rate at which these events actually occur to people, which takes into account their subjective perception? In other words, yeah, how intense the feeling was that they got, how jaw-dropping the thing was.
And if we step back and look at the probability of one of these once-in-a-lifetime coincidences, we can do a base rate analysis, and the surprise is generated out of what seems to be the low probabilities. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got a I think a very natural. It's one of the beautiful things about being human is that we deal very well with uncertainty. None of us knows what's going to happen in our lives. None of us know, what the future is going to hold, and we like it that way. There've been good experiments showing that people don't want to know what they're going to be doing next year. They don't want to know what they're going to get for Christmas. We have evolved to just as well to live well with uncertainty, except some people, there is a clinical psychological condition where people find it extremely difficult to deal with not knowing what's going to happen in the future. But
we like surprises.
We like surprises, and we become very tuned to them. Now, we may not be good at the mathematical elements of probability, and we're not. Humans are very poor at it. It's a very alien way of thinking that was only developed in the 1650s. I mean, incredibly late in science and psychology and technology, unbelievably late development in mathematics. The probability is, considering people have been gambling and everything and soothsaying for donkey's years. So, but I think our intuitive feeling for surprise is extremely well tuned. We do realize, we go, oh wow, and we all do that together. We laugh at similar things. We jaw drop at similar things. I think it's a beautiful. I think it's one of the reasons I love the coincidence area, in that I just think it's a beautiful part of the human condition. Oh my God! Sorry.
That sounds like a taxi.
It's my phone going off.
Is surprise a measure, a subjective measure of probability?
Yes, it is. It's of perceived unlikeliness.
Unlikeliness, yes.
It's perceived unlikeliness. Yes.
We have about a minute and a half left in this segment, but what's a typical books, TV, radio, or news coincidence that you deal with?
I don't know. What kind of thing do you mean by that? I'm not sure about radio and TV ones, because again, we don't. The premonition, the precognition ones, we don't have enough.
Well, I'm looking at the results of that quid analysis of your 4,000 patients that appeared in the Atlantic.
Yeah,
and the second highest birthdays was 11%, and the media ones were 10%. So it was the second most common grouping of coincidence types in that quid analysis.
Oh, right. Okay, media ones. No, I'm surprised at this, because when we did our own calculations, it was much more the meeting people in odd places and the and the surprising in meeting people you knew in odd places, and the surprising connection you made with strangers was the main.
Well, the quid analysis was the media with 10%, right behind birthdays 11%.
Oh no, I would know. Yeah, no, I'm slightly confused by that, because I don't think that I can't think of media ones.
That was the.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of this segment, so we'll leave that alone. And I got some other things to be able to ask you about, but this is cool. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Sir David Spiegelhalter.
Okay, I'm sorry about that phone.
Welcome back to CC with BB. I'm Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and this is Connecting with Coincidence, and our guest is David Spiegelhalter, and we are talking statistics. So, David, let's go on to some other ones that I find interesting for you to tell me about how you think about them. One of the most common forms of coincidences is multiple independent discoveries. These include the independent formulation of calculus by Isaac Newton, Gottfried Leibniz, and others, the 18th century discovery of oxygen by Scheele and Priestley and Lavoisier, and the theory of evolution by Darwin and Wallace. And my favorite one is February 14th, 1876, when representatives of Elisha Gray and Alexander Graham Bell walked into the U.S. Patent Office with patents for the telephone. How do you think about multiple independent discoveries?
I don't find those at least the least surprising. Having worked in scientific stuff, I've been publishing papers for years and things like that. They're just trains of thought that go on, and the subjects develop, and many people are thinking very similar things at the same time. And actually, even in nowadays, of course, lots of people are communicating. We're more aware of what other people are doing. But even in the past, there's considerable communication between researchers. They say at the time of Newton and Leibniz, they were communicating. There was quite a lot of communication around Britain and the continent through the Royal Society. So there's just for scientific ideas, many people are thinking very similar things all at the same time. So I don't find it at all surprising that there's that things happen. Coming into the patent office on the same day is quite extraordinary. And I don't know enough about the exact history of the telephone to know what the story of that development was. But very often people have got some shared knowledge. There's some common background to it that can explain or make it reasonable that these things are happening in parallel. I mean, in science now, there are loads of different groups around the world all working on the same thing at the same time, so the announcement, the discovery in a sense, is likely to come at very similar intervals. Yeah.
Thinking the same things at the same time. It's gotten me to think that if I come up with some smart idea, that someone else is also thinking it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I almost certainly, because there's a lot of smart people around, and the civilization, there's certain pressures, that many people will be thinking very similar things. I think it's very rare that someone will come up with a completely novel, new idea. Lots of people come up with similar ideas at the same time, because that's what the progress of whatever subject it is that's being studied, or business that's being developed, has reached a certain stage, which is common across the world. So I think it's the same things happen with the mathematicians. Ramanujan and in India, just a lot of people rediscovered mathematics, maybe not at the same time, but actually come to the same conclusions, just independently come to these conclusions without any contact at all. And it's quite likely that that'll happen simultaneously or fairly simultaneously.
I had a funny one where I invented a word called simulpathity, which was meant to suggest feeling at the same time at a distance. And there are lots of stories of people reporting having the same feeling as usually a loved one who's going through something usually painful at a distance. It's kind of common with twins. So it was I made it up. And I looked it up on the internet in 2014 when I made it up, and it wasn't there. And then I looked up in 2016, and somebody had made a video that was titled Simulpathity.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
And so we were working in somewhat different areas. You could say they're the same somehow, but that struck me. It wasn't. We weren't working in the same area. He wasn't looking at coincidences. He wasn't even thinking. So, how do you think about that one?
Yeah, that's quite nice. So, no, I like that. And there must be many examples of words that people have essentially invented and other people have invented. I mean, it happens with business names all the time. It happens with lots of things. I've just got a book coming out with a cover, and then we just found another book that's got an almost identical cover that was done because we're just thinking so similarly, and I was a bit surprised, but I wasn't that surprised to see it because there's just a limited number of options. This is a natural choice, design choice to make, and so people come up with very, very similar ideas. I think human minds do work along very similar ways.
And it's the way you think about it is that human minds are working independently. Is there anything about a group mind that this suggests to you?
No, I'd need extraordinary evidence. No, I think twins are something special. I think, and so I'm not ruling out the ability for shared thought across a distance. I'm not totally saying that it's totally impossible, but I regard it as a fairly extraordinary claim, and I would require some pretty strong evidence for that. And again, I don't really accept retrospective reports of simultaneous feelings as being good evidence.
The one that got me started with this is that I was in San Francisco, uncontrollably choking. It was 11 p.m. in San Francisco, and I couldn't get whatever it was out of my throat. And then the next day, my brother told me that in Wilmington, Delaware, at 2 a.m., which was 11 p.m. San Francisco time, my father had died choking on blood in his throat. That got my attention.
Yeah, no, that is pretty impressive. Yes, yeah, that is quite extraordinary. But again, I kind of think, hang on, what's going on? What is being posited there? I'm afraid I'm very skeptical about.
Well, I try to do the base rate of my choking, and the base rate of a person in my father's condition choking on his own blood. I try to make some estimates.
But did you know? I don't want to go. It's a bit, sad thing to talk about. But I just wondered, did you know about your father's condition? About what the risks were to him? What might happen to him?
He had an infection, a Manila infection, from which he was supposedly recovering after having had some surgery to put to correct an aneurysm, a hepatic artery aneurysm. So he was not healthy, but he was supposedly on recovery. But whatever it was going on with him, I was under the impression that he was getting better. So it was something that still happened to him and then happened to me around the same time. So I had to look at the base rate of my choking, which I've never choked like that before or since, not that I haven't coughed a lot. So my base rate was pretty low. His could have been higher, choking on something from his esophagus.
Yeah. No, that's a... Because, what can I say? You can't say, well, what am I supposed to say? Am I supposed to say, yeah, that shows there's some sort of, extraordinary, communication at a distance of something like that? Well, that, of course, is an explanation. Another explanation is that there isn't.
There isn't, yeah.
And it is an extraordinary event.
It got your attention in telling you that, and that's all. That's all I really would hope for. And what I found was lots more stories like that, and that's one of the things that got me interested. And so that I just wanted to hear how you thought about it. Let me tell you another one, because this can be a little shorter. You're familiar with the novel, The Futility, which 14 years before the sinking of the Titanic seemed to describe a lot of the details of the Titanic. How do you? I don't believe a word of it unless I've seen the novel and have checked everything in it. These stories that these events are so similar and things like that. I'm afraid I haven't seen the other. I tend to. Like the classic story of the girl with the balloon and, picked up a girl with the same name and this sort of thing. There's all sorts of ways in which these get embellished, that the coincidences are starting to make closer than they really are, and so on. So, no, I can't talk about something unless I got absolutely the evidence right in front of me. Because I don't believe secondhand reports of coincidences on the whole. I tend not to believe them. I'm deeply skeptical of anybody who reports somebody else's coincidence. Yeah, I would need to see that right in front of me. Well, the Titanic you can look at. Yeah. Because the details of what the Titanic size was, and number of lifeboats, the number of people on it, and striking the iceberg in the North Atlantic. These are all observables that
well, I haven't seen the book, and yeah, it does sound quite amazing. Again, what am I supposed to say? It's amazing. What do you mean? There's people had premonition of the Titanic? I don't know. No, I don't believe it. And all I can say is I don't believe it. And until I see the evidence and I could see the book, and I might think, oh yeah, that really is extraordinary. Yeah, isn't that amazing? When you think of the number of events that have happened, and the number of books that have been written, there's going to be amazing things happen. I
love bouncing against your worldview. It gives me clarity in the way I think, because I don't want to be particularly fuzzy-minded in doing this, because I think there's a lot to be gained from the study of coincidences. I've spent a lot of years looking at them, but it's very important to me to hear how you think about how these things might work. And I very much appreciate being able to do that. We're coming to the end of this third segment. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. We are talking with Sir David Spiegelhalter. Welcome back to CC with BB. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. Our guest today is Sir David Spiegelhalter, and we are talking mean statistics, baby. We are talking mean statistics. Why did I use the word mean there? I don't know, talking about statistics. Was I having a play on words or something? I don't know, but I like puns are kind of coincidences to me.
I think that's maybe why I love puns. I think it's great humor. Yeah.
And that's what we just did too, right? And they come out kind of not when I'm planning of it. A lot of us do it because the single sentences are just one line things, and they don't capture three dimensions. And when I'm saying we're talking about mean statistics, we're talking about average statistics, and we're talking about a sharp edge on statistics as we're going on this. It's fun. Do you know Magda Osman at Queen Mary University, London?
No, I don't.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about how she thinks about coincidences, and I think she's making a valuable contribution. She thinks that coincidence analysis is the product of rational cognitive processes and are an unavoidable result of our mind searching for causality in reality.
Oh, absolutely. No, this is what I end up talking about all the time. Do you know this wonderful Greek word, apophenia?
Sure.
Sorry, which is just my favorite word, and I use it all the time because, and this isn't just to do with, apophenia means the tendency to find patterns where they don't exist, and also the tendency to try to find reasons for things where they don't exist. And I think this is such an important aspect of our human condition, and often it works very well. I tend to concentrate on these ideas when just general discussing about risks. Why are people anxious about some things? How do people deal with risk and uncertainty? And so on. And I know that very often there's a huge human tendency to overinterpret signals, and to be very unwilling to admit that the things they see in front of them, there's essentially no explanation for why they're there. That you can call it chance, fate, fortune, whatever you want to call it, but there's no actual causal line of reasoning which can explain why something happened. Why did I win the lottery? Why was this person survived and this person didn't survive? The Bridge of St. Louis Ray is a lovely exposition of that whole analysis of trying to work out why something happened, why it didn't. And so
would you summarize for our audience what that Bridge of St. Louis Ray was?
Oh, it's just a lovely story of a bridge that collapses in 18th century South America, and I think 5 people are killed.
Yeah.
And the whole, story is about, somebody else searching for reasons for why those particular people, were killed, and which is, to me, is not utterly futile exercise, because sometimes there's just there's no reason that we know that why things happen, but huge human tendency to try to find patterns and causality. We're storytellers. We like narratives. We like beginnings, middles, and ends. We like whodunits where the story's wrapped up. Where we've got an explanation. We like thrillers where it's all resolved. All our films always end up with a resolution, and things like in the hour after an hour and a half, it's all the goodies win or not or whatever. But usually they do, which of course isn't true in real life. So we love that as humans. Those are the sort of nicely contained stories with a strict narrative arc beginning and a reason why things happen. Now, real life just isn't like that. And me as a statistician spend my whole time often debunking, not in terms of coincidences, but in terms of things people have observed when they've done experiments, or this is because of X. And I say, well, no, I don't know why. You can't say that. You cannot say that just because these two things happen together, one caused the other. The classic, correlation is not causation. And yet it's a mistake that's made so much. And I spend half my media career, dumping on people making claims that they shouldn't be making. And so I am extremely sensitized to this human condition to try to find narrative stories, causality, where it doesn't actually exist.
What about the false negatives?
What not spotting relationships when they are there?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, of course we can do that. We can be blind to things, and I'm maybe I'm guilty of false negatives in my deep skepticism about
that's what I think.
Action at a distance of things. Yeah, no, it might very well be the case, but
you're very good, and that's what I'm saying at debunking the false positives. And what Magda Osman is arguing is that searching for patterns is essential to our survival. And the cost of not having this ability far outweighs the false path we take when we see patterns that aren't there.
Yeah. I know. As I said, it's a massively beneficial thing that we see patterns that are that we see things that aren't there. The usual thing is the tiger, the tiger that isn't the tiger, and the rustling in the bushes. It's much better that we suspect it's a tiger and run away than sit there and work out the chances that it's just the wind and then get eaten. So
that's true. That's survival. But what she's talking about is that the analysis for causality and coincidences not only can get us into false positives, thinking things are true when they're not, but they also can have us not see the things that are true, that are not, we miss the false negatives. We miss what's there. And what you seem to emphasize much more is debunking the false positive. But coincidences are also a way, she argues, of finding causal relationships that are there.
Well, quite possibly, but you're talking to the wrong profession, because are professional skeptics. That we are. That's our job. We're essentially the policemen of science. we're the.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Oh no, we are. Good. We are the miserable ones.
I love that. We're the policemen of science.
Yeah,
okay,
We're the misery guts that go around, and when everyone says they've claimed they've discovered something, we go no, you haven't. And we demand higher and higher, the evidence in order to prove something's the case. Just like drug regulation, you've got to, in order to get a drug passed by the FDA to be marketed, you've got to do 2 independent clinical trials, each of which has only got a 1 in 20 chance of being a false positive if the drug doesn't work. And so by that time, you've got to do these things. It would be incredibly surprising if the drug didn't work. We demand this incredible level of surprise before we're willing to shift our minds. The Higgs boson that was required to, in order to declare that, it needed less than 1 in 3 million chance that actually this event, this data was just a false positive. So we demand very stringent criteria before we're willing to shift our mind from our deeply skeptical initial position. And I'm afraid, I'm of the right. Maybe my personality. What came first, the professional?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
No. Statisticians are particular personality types. There's been some analysis that I do believe that they're people who tend to be deeply skeptical of things that are claimed unless there's very good evidence for them. So I'm sorry about that.
No. We need that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And in the coincidence studies.
But you're quite right. We need the other sort of thing. We need, people with imagination and ideas and things like that. We need that as well. So
what you've gotten clear to me as the policeman, you do the false positives. That's your major thing. And I hadn't had that very clear before. We only have about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes left, but I'm interested in your medical stuff, since I'm a psychiatrist and I study probabilities indirectly in my clinic. Tell us some of in the short period of time, what you do with medical statistics.
Oh, we at the moment, I work with psychologists on putting front ends on systems that can tell people the future. Well, of course, no, give people probabilities about the future. For example, if you have got breast cancer and you have chemotherapy, what's the chance you'll be alive after 10 years? And that's what we go. I'm writing computer software that will do that, and it's being used very widely. And we put the front end on it in order to allow people to use it and empower them to make better decisions. And it's all to do with predicting the future, but never predicting what's going to happen. Always
it's
just giving people
probabilities.
Probabilities, and because people find probability difficult, you've got to be really careful in the way that you do it. Just before we finish, have I got time to say the coincidence happened to me? Because they never happened to me, because I'm such a miserable git and I stare at the ground and so never notice anything. But I was making a program about coincidences, and I was saying no coincidence never happened to me. And I was telling this wonderful coincidence story which involved a birthday, and I couldn't remember the birthday, so I made one up, and I can't remember what it now. But I said something like January the 28th, and there's this pause, and then the director, the producer on the other end of the line, and the sound engineer both said, "That's my birthday."
Both of them
said, "That's my birthday." So I just made a birthday up, and there are 3 other people on the line, and it was the birthday of 2 of the other people, and they were in the same room, and they were completely unaware that they shared a birthday. So that was a really cracking one, and that's 1 in 135,000. Of getting 3 people with a matching, that 2 other people match a birthday that I said.
And in my way of thinking, that in that pause when you didn't know what to pick.
Exactly.
In that pause, I do say that. I'm glad you knew I would say that.
I knew you'd say that it came down the line somehow, because I really did. I pulled a birthday out
of the air, and those were the 2 right around you.
Exactly.
And we call that telepathy, sir.
Yeah. I must say, I was slightly dumbstruck, but good. I'm still not shifting.
Thanks for giving that one. We've come to the end, David. Thanks you so very much for being on the show.
No, pleasure, real pleasure.
You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and we had a great time talking with David Spiegelhalter.